Comments?
Yes, I just wanted to let you all know that I just wanted to send my note of appreciation to two of our students who lended us their voice on the COVID-19 issues and have had both of their columns featured. Sarah and Lauren have both had their columns published on Kentucky Teacher. I believe both have been shared by the governor's office and have been very popular on our website. So if either of you two want to pop in and say a couple of words, and then also Lieutenant Governor Coleman is going to be joining us probably about 9:15. So just FYI, we'll have to have her pop in. I think she's got a limited time. So just FYI on the agenda there. So just keep an eye on that. Sarah and Lauren, are you here today?
Yes.
Sarah? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you want to say anything about your column?
I don't even know. It went more viral than I expected, definitely.
Well, I appreciate you taking the opportunity to do that, and congratulations. I heard you just won another award yesterday too. Did I see that correct?
For our Student Choice Awards?
Yes.
Yes.
So congratulations to that. So
yes, thank you. It was my pleasure writing it.
Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate that. And then you all, I'm going to be sending out an exit slip too at the end of the session, and I really appreciate you all filling that out last time. That really helped us in guiding what we put on these agendas and taking surveys. So I will go ahead and let Robin begin. And when the governor, Lieutenant Governor pops in and says a few words, we'll just take a brief pause. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be online with you this morning. I think this is the first time I've had the opportunity to join you for one of your meetings, and I'm really looking forward to it. Commissioner Brown has shared with us, all of us at the staff of the Department of Education, the insightful comments and wonderful feedback that you all have been giving to him, and I echo his remarks in appreciation for all that you're sharing with us. I'm going to jump right into our and I'm going to try to share my screen with you. Okay, can someone let me know if you can see my screen?
We can see your screen.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start with a little bit of background for context. And we are going to talk this morning about the CARES Act. The CARES Act is an acronym because in education land, we always have to have an acronym for everything, but it stands for the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, kind of a long title that they've reduced to just a few letters, which is very much appreciative when you're talking about it. As we go through the short presentation today, if you could have this guiding question in your mind, what advice would you give to your school district as they consider how to spend CARES Act funds? For a little bit of background on funding of local school districts, funds primarily come from three different resources. They come from the state. The Commonwealth of Kentucky provides funding to local school districts, and sometimes you may hear people talking about the SEEK formula, that is the Support Education Excellence in Kentucky formula. And that's the primary base funding level that comes to your school districts to help them do all the things that they do on behalf of their staff and students and families. The other resource that school districts receive is from local tax revenues. So anytime that you pay property taxes on your home or car taxes, some of that money eventually ends up with the local school district. Sometimes it comes up to the state and then gets sent back down to them. Other times it comes directly to the local school districts in terms of dollars. And then finally, there is federal funding that is associated with education in the United States. And those funds primarily come to support certain programs that we call federal programs. And that may include certain help for certain student populations. But this CARES Act funding is above and beyond all those normal funds that school districts receive. So it is actually a relief package of funding that is associated with the coronavirus and all the additional challenges that school districts are faced with. It was passed and became effective on March 27th. And it's a lot of money. It's 2.2 trillion in emergency funding across the United States. It's not just for education, it's for lots of other things to help families and businesses, unemployment. There's lots of money associated for different categories, and each part of the bill contains either certain provisions or restrictions or guidance on how that money can be spent. There is about, out of that 2.2 trillion, about 30.75 billion in specifically for emergency education funding to our states. Kentucky is receiving about 1.73 billion in CARES Act funds. Again, that's for all activities that are going on associated with the coronavirus. But today we're actually going to talk about two pots of money, and that is the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, and we call that GEAR. That's about $44 million. And the elementary and secondary school emergency of about $193 million. So pretty substantial pots of money that are coming again to supplement funds that are already received by local school districts. Let's focus on the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund first, or GEAR. About $44 million. And states were given notice of these funds, and we actually had to submit an application and that notice that we could do that was on April 14th. And I'm pleased to say that Kentucky actually submitted their application yesterday. So it's really good news that we've already submitted our application, and that has now gone to the U.S. Department of Education, who looks at our application and will consider it for approval. Under the GEAR specifically, the governor gets to decide and may award funds really in three broad areas. The governor could decide to support school districts in the state where KDE, as the state education agency, deems most significantly impacted by the coronavirus. There also could be emergency support to higher education institutions or to other partners that provide significant essential services for carrying out education and instruction. Local school districts are very fortunate. We have worked with the Lieutenant Governor, and she will be joining us shortly. But we've worked with her and the Education and Workforce Cabinet, of which she is also the Cabinet Secretary. And out of that $44 million, Governor Beshear has decided to allot $30 million out of the 44 to support elementary and secondary education. So that is to support your local school districts. In Kentucky, as we considered that requirement of dividing this pot of money for school districts that were significantly impacted by the coronavirus, we really took the position that all of our school districts have been significantly impacted. And so our goal, and in our application, our goal is to basically provide funding, additional funding for all school districts. So each of your school districts, if our application is approved, will receive additional funding to support the efforts of your school district. We did, in conjunction with the governor's office and the lieutenant governor, determine that school districts are going to use these funds, or we're going to guide the districts to use these funds in two primary areas. And so that's those areas of support would be in remote learning and technology, and to continue food service. I think as many of you participating in your non-traditional instruction, that is the remote learning and the technology that is provided to support that. I think we all agree that NTI is a wonderful program which allows instruction to continue, and we're getting better at it every single day. But there are probably some opportunities for improvement in that remote learning and technology. Maybe students could use a little more help in the use of that remote technology. Maybe your teachers could use a little more help as well. And this would allow opportunities for professional development to help those teachers become more effective instructors. And I know we've got some out there that are doing a great job, because I've actually observed some of that in my own household. My daughter is a student teacher, and some of her teachers that she's partnering with, they've got it down. But other people might be a little more help. People like me that aren't as comfortable with the remote learning aspect. And then for food service, it's really important, as we are no longer in person in our buildings and no longer going through the cafeteria lines, that students that need those food service to continue, that we continue to provide it for them. And I think we've seen really great models across all your school districts of how they are making sure that students still have access to the nutritional requirements of learning. The other pot of money is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. Kentucky's grant is about $193 million. And the way this gets allocated is a minimum of 90% of that money will go to local school districts. So the vast majority of the funds associated with that will go to local school districts. The remaining 10% will actually be held at the Department of Education, and we will look for ways that we can support all your local school districts on statewide initiatives or efforts, and probably use partners, educational partners, to help us support you and the delivery of instruction to students. The notice of funds and application, again, we were invited to apply for these funds, was on April 23rd, and we submitted the application this past Saturday. So both of the applications for these large pots of money are already with the U.S. Department of Education, and we look forward to them approving those very soon, so we can start sending money to your districts. Under the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, there are broad permitted uses under this act. Typically, when we receive federal money, they're a little more restrictive on how we can use funds. They tell us in the legislation itself or in guidance, you can only spend it this way or you can only spend it that way. This pot of money is really unlike any other, at least that I have seen, in that it gives really broad authority to local school districts on the decisions that they need to make to help support their local school districts. So they can use this money for already authorized activities under the Every Student Succeeds Act, IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Act, Perkins, which is focused more toward career and tech ed, McKinney-Vento Homeless, and Adult Education and Family Literacy Act. So all the activities they can already do and have some funding associated with each of those, they can use any of this money, this additional funds, for those purposes as well. And then there's a list of other things that you see on the slide that really focus on things more related to the coronavirus and the impact of the coronavirus. So some of the things I think that we're going to be talking about later in the agenda are that mental health support and summer learning. And that's kind of all I have as far as the materials for presentation. But I guess if we go back to that original guiding question, now that you've learned a little bit about the CARES funds and how they can be used, I think we would really be interested in, and as you live through NTI and what it looks like in your own particular district, what advice would you give to your school district about how they could spend this CARES Act funding to really benefit students? And I'm going to kind of open it up, and let's see if anyone has any thoughts or ideas on how we could spend that additional CARES Act funds.
Students, what have you seen in your districts right now that you feel is not being addressed that Robin just laid out for you? I know that in the past you have said that you felt like there might have been a technology gap, or that maybe not all students had access to technology. I know that was one issue that was laid out. What are some, even if I know that we have a lot of seniors on here, you know, if this were to happen again next year, what are some of the things that you think we should consider, and other districts should consider, that could happen, or even as we move into the fall, as we deal with this? These are some of the things that we would like to hear your feedback on.
This is CJ Johnson from Marshall County. I think that it's really important that we try to push the technology, because some students that have technology are getting kind of more attention and learning, like kind of instruction, than like students who do not, that are getting packets and stuff. So I think that should be at the forefront. That way we can make kind of learning equal across the board.
CJ, when you talk about that, is it a device problem where students don't have a device at their homes, or is it a bandwidth problem? Is it an access to the internet? I mean, can you share with us a little bit about what you see?
I think the access to internet's I think it's a little bit of everything. I think devices would help, especially like just a small group would just probably help the spread there. But I think trying to create more opportunity for these kids that don't have access to internet to have pretty much the same attention and instruction that everyone else is getting, even though like it's kind of hard to do right now. I think that's really important to focus on.
Thank you. That's a really important comment for us to keep in mind. Do we have anyone else?
This is Josh Griffith from Russell Independent School.
Good morning, Josh.
A lot of what I've seen is that kids who live kind of out in the country, in terms of like the bandwidth, they don't actually have good enough internet to be able to connect to the classroom. So a lot of students are having to go out to their cars and do it on their phones somewhere in a parking lot because the libraries are closed. So they're having a lot of issues with that.
Yeah, I've actually heard that as well. And of course, we're also trying to stay healthy at home. And so that makes it more difficult to stay within your home and complete your schoolwork if you've got to go out and find that way to connect. So I'm sure that's really, really challenging for some students. Anyone else?
This is Roheen Dutt from Jefferson County, and I agree with Chris and Josh with the idea that we need to make sure that the bandwidth is good for everyone. But then also, I agree with the thing that everyone should have food access during this time. So I think putting some funding into that would also be good.
Thank you very much. You know, we do find that, especially in this time of the pandemic, the role that school districts are playing in making sure that students have access to food is really, really important. And as we head into the summer months, I think it will be even more important. You know, food doesn't stop just when we end the school year. The students need that support year round. And as we listen to the national media, we see lots of evidence of families that really have never had to access any type of food bank or any type of alternate to provide meals for their family. And so those places are also seeing this rise in numbers that they have to provide assistance to. So we're really hoping that we can continue to encourage local school districts to the extent that they can to continue to provide that over the summer and as we start back again in the fall. So really important. We've kind of talked about technology and food. Do you all see any other gaps? If, you know, someone came to you and said, here's some extra money, how can you think of anything else that would be helpful as we're working and operating in this new environment of remote learning.
This is Caleb Spencer from Wolfe County High School. And as we go back to school in the fall, if we get to go back to school in the fall, I'm afraid that students will be so far behind, especially the elementary students. And I'm just wondering how we can ensure that those students will be okay when we come back and, they just fall back into, the regular school cycle.
That's a really good question. I think everyone is trying to be thoughtful about remediation or intervention efforts that will be needed to really help all students. We talk sometimes in our education world about the summer slide, which is, when students go away for the summertime and then they come back, and then you have to do a little bit to kind of get everyone kind of back in the groove again of education. But we see this as a particular concern this year because we've been operating under remote instruction for, several weeks now at the end of the school year. Then we've got the summer, and then we'll have to pick up again. So I appreciate that comment very much. It's an important thing for us to all keep at our forefront, that some kids are, and really all kids may need a little extra help as we go back to school in the fall, whatever that looks like. So thank you for that comment.
This is CJ Johnson from Marshall County, referring to the question about the extra money that schools can use. I think any way to give back to the community, especially in this time, so like continuing food services, stuff like that. I think it's kind of dependent on the individual school district, so whatever that community is struggling with. Like my school district is near a lot of like industrial power plants and stuff. So any way that we can assist them, because like they're shut down, so trying to help any way we can in that way. Just everyone's gonna have to work together to get this done. So I think helping communities would be really giving back to the community some way, somehow, would be really important in this like kind of time struggle.
Yeah, and under the larger CARES Act, not specifically out of the two pots of money we've kind of focused on this morning, but the CARES Act overall does have relief funding for all different types of entities. So community support and the challenges are facing each community are individualized. They're very different. So I do think the CARES Act funding contemplates lots of different types of funds for different type of uses for that very purpose. Well, I think I really appreciate. I think we've had a really good discussion here this morning. Kevin was right. Your comments are very thoughtful and insightful, and we will use these as we go forward and share with other groups about the thoughts of the Student Advisory Council. So thank you very much for spending a few minutes with me this morning and talking about the CARES Act.
And if you guys go ahead, I was to say, and if you guys have more thoughts as the meeting continues, feel free to just think about that, and there'll be an opportunity for you to write down in the exit slip as well at the end of the meeting too. So if there's something that comes up, please feel free to write that down, because it's very valuable. So let me check and see if the Lieutenant Governor has joined. Usually she says something. I don't think so. So we can move on to our next topic with Dr. Ellis and Dr. Foster, if they're on. And that topic is summer learning.
Good morning, everybody, especially good morning, early morning to our central time zone folks. I'm so glad you were able to tune in. It's always good to see your names pop up and your faces when we're able to see your video when you're talking. So today, Dr. Foster and I are just going to be getting your input, and I didn't catch the name of who brought up the concern around summer learning and about gaps, especially elementary kids as they come back in the fall. I so appreciate that comment, as Robin Kenny had said as well. It's very thoughtful. It's very forward thinking. That's exactly where we are right now. So just to give you an idea of what we're thinking about for summer is that we know that you all are weary and are probably ready for a little break. And I know families, especially of small children, are a little weary too. As Commissioner Brown has mentioned, it's hard work, and everyone has done so well. So we're trying to prepare for what we offer in the summer to families or for districts to use as they want, to really encourage kids to stay engaged somehow in learning, whether it's reading or doing some mathematics, especially for our younger students, that they stay engaged in literacy and numeracy, and avoid as much slide as possible. So we have a partnership with some of our summer feeding programs. So many of your districts who provide food for families every single day to you all for breakfast and or lunch. There are over 2,000 sites who do that in the summer as well, and we'll probably have even more this summer, and we're very grateful for that. And so what we've done in the past is we've teamed up with some of our summer feeding folks to distribute reading materials and things for families, especially of younger kids. And since we can't be there in person this year and read books to the kids and their families, the districts who've signed on have materials, but we're also making those materials available online on our website, and they're very family friendly, different games and activities, and of course KET and what they're doing. And somebody also mentioned the libraries. We did hear yesterday that they're working on a plan for reopening libraries, but we don't really know when that will be or at what capacity. But whoever said that they rely on it, you're 100% right. Our libraries are used heavily in the summer for internet connection and to access books and resources, and sometimes just for air conditioning. And so we want to make sure that if that service is not available, how we're promoting different resources and materials. So we're in partnership with Library and Archives to put something on some of their resources online as well. But we know that there are other barriers to the summer and how we can provide additional summer support. I'll pause there and see, Dr. Foster, did you want to add to that? And then I would love to hear from you all on what you see as possible barriers to the summer and things that come to mind for you that you feel like we need to be aware of or we need to possibly address. Dr. Foster, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for taking the time to participate in the advisory meeting. I just kind of want to reiterate everything that Dr. Ellis has said. We really want to hear from you in this discussion. You all have had great comments already about challenges and barriers that you are facing. But thinking about moving forward into the summer, we'd really like to hear, are there any additional barriers or challenges that you don't think you've faced so far through NTI that maybe students in your area would face in the months of June and July and early August? So we can open that up for discussion now. Tony, do you want to share the guided question?
Sure. Yes, I can do that. Well, the guided question on summer learning, I can say it and then I can share it up on the screen if you would like. But the guiding question is, what are the biggest barriers preventing the provision of meaningful summer learning for students? What are the biggest barriers preventing the provision of meaningful summer learning for our students? So what will prevent you from having, or our students from having, valuable summer learning? And we'll open that up.
And I think we might also mention too, many of you are actually going to graduate from high school in the next few weeks. And so if you have concerns about that transitioning from your senior year in high school into, if you're going to attend a vocational school or junior college or armed forces or a four-year college, if you have concerns about that transition time as well, please share that too, because we may be able to put together some resources and guidance to help support you in the next phase of your education.
Kelly, that is a great point. While we're waiting for folks to think about this, is that I know many of the universities that you all will be attending are hosting virtual orientation. which is very different than being on campus and experiencing meeting folks and seeing the campus and what's going to be your new home. So that's a great point about transition. So we really do open it to anything that's on your mind for this summer.
This is Lauren Witt from Glasgow High School. I will be attending the University of Kentucky, and I want to try and go to PA school. So in order to do that, we have to gain clinical hours and patient hours. So over this summer, I'm taking a phlebotomy certification course so that I will kind of be on track for getting those hours and everything like that, just because you know, with the transition, it can be kind of hard getting everything in line, and I want to make sure that I set myself up to be the most prepared that I can be. And it's online.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And I think that's a great point of taking advantage of opportunities online. I really thank you for sharing that. You're right, because things don't slow down. They're still moving along, and we just have some extra hurdles to get through. But I think that's even a great point of just different opportunities students can take advantage of this summer that may be online opportunities that maybe you haven't considered before. But thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it, and good for you.
Thank you.
This is CJ Johnson from Marshall County. I think that students that would normally get input, like especially ones that are undecided about their future plans, that would get the input from the last few months of their high school career from teachers or guidance counselors or so on. But I think that some resources to help them kind of decide what path is best for them would really help some students, especially ones that don't know what they're going to do.
CJ, another great point. I appreciate that. And you're right. We can't assume that everybody just knows. And especially now, there may even be some changed minds. And so I think even some resources that we could definitely work with Dr. Sweeney on with just decisions and career decisions or post-secondary decisions that are being made, I think is a great point about transition and the process for that and considerations. I think that's a really good point as well. Thank you very much.
And if you all want to continue to think about this as we move on to other topics, that's totally fine. I know sometimes as the conversation goes up, you think about things when we move on to different topics, and as always, towards the end, we'll recap everything that we've talked about and give you an opportunity to chat again about the options. So unless you have something else you want to add to the conversation, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda. And Dr. Ellis and I believe Dr. Foster will be here for the duration.
You are correct. So the other thing that we're working on, and this really would include maybe some others if they're on the call, but I'd love to hear this. And this was brought up. Again, you guys are right in line with what we're thinking as well, is there's a lot of questions around re-entry in the fall. So for many of you, as Tony had mentioned before, are seniors. So you're going to be entering a new world, whatever that may look like in your post-secondary decisions, whether that's military, the workforce, a trade school, a post-secondary institution, whatever it may be. And that will be very different. For those of you who are not seniors and you are going back into all the students who will be returning in the fall, we're looking at providing support to districts on how those decisions are made, because those are big decisions. And so one of the facets would be obviously the academic piece. How do you prepare for kids who are all coming in with some type of gap? Many of you have had excellent experiences, and it really is encouraging to hear your experiences that you've had when we've talked to you all about NTI work and the engagement you've had with your teachers. But you are also very keenly aware of those who may have had to work by paper packet, and have had little to no interaction with their teachers, not because there wasn't an effort made. There could have just been not having connectivity. Many of my husband's students work 40 hours a week at Kroger right now because they needed employees, and many of their families were laid off. or lost their jobs. And so there are a lot of factors that are going to have an impact on students, the gaps that they have, the lack of instruction that many of them have had, and how do teachers address that, and how do we welcome people back in the school? So that's one facet, and we're working through that, and we're providing resources to teachers, and feel really good about that. It's a lot of work to do to prepare for, but it's absolutely the right work. Another piece that Dr. Sweeney may mention is that we're working on the mental health. There may be trauma that has occurred in the home, or just anxiety about returning to a school. There may be concern about COVID-19 and contracting COVID. And so, and that's not just for students, that could be for students, staff, and even families. And so there's a facet around mental health and the social emotional needs of the folks coming back to school. And then there's a lot of operational piece. So Robin Kenny's team is over how to do those things. How do you plan and provide guidance to districts about how you plan for people re-entering? What do you do with school buses when there's maybe 70 kids who normally ride and you have to social distance? What does that look like? So there's a lot of logistics around that. There's also concern around special populations, students with disabilities. If we can't start school in the fall in traditional ways, how do we do that? How do we have a hybrid? So there's lots and lots of things that we are considering right now. And Karen, who's on the call, her team is working on a plan to put a plan together to help districts, like a framework, to help districts plan for student return. So it's pretty multifaceted. So just thinking about that, what type of concerns come to your mind as we talk about re-entry, whether that be for you, maybe your younger siblings, maybe just things that are coming to mind that may be of concern of, this is what really worries me, or this is what comes to mind. So one of your suggestions was, what are we going to do for these elementary kids to ensure that they're not coming in the hole? They're already behind. That's exactly what we're thinking about too. And so we're working with teachers on thinking about what curriculum and standards were covered this year and whatever grade they were in. And then how do we prepare to teach kids where they are and get them up to speed at the best that we can, knowing that everybody's coming in at a little bit different place. So we are working through that and providing resources. What else comes to mind that may be a little bit concerning? Or Dr. Foster, do you have anything else to add to that before we take their feedback?
I do not. I think that was a perfect description.
All right, well, thanks. So we'd love to hear from you guys on concerns that you have, or just ideas, things that are swirling in your mind about coming back into a school setting, coming back into your school. And if you're not, if you are a senior, even what sticks out in your mind as concerns?
This is Lauren Witt from Glasgow High School. I'm a senior, but I'm going to take it from a different perspective. So my mom is a preschool teacher at Glasgow Preschool Academy, and we were just talking about how you brought up the point where it'll be different transportation-wise, because there could be 70 kids on a bus, headed to school, and with social distancing, we don't really know how that's going to look just yet. And also, she deals with an environment where, kids can be, blowing their nose or, just doing kid type things, and they can't really be doing that because of the whole COVID-19, and we want to keep everything clean and all of that. So I don't know. It's just kind of something to think about with a different spin on it, just because, with little kids, it can be vastly different than with high schoolers or even college students. You don't really have to worry about, certain things, but it's something that she'll have to plan accordingly and, figure out something. But that was a different perspective.
I think that's a very good point. I'm just going to say, Amanda, and, we're going to be advising your school districts that they're going to need to be ready to select from a menu of options over the next year. There, we want to see that 70 passenger bus come in on August 15th with 70 kids on it, and then a 400 capacity school have 400 kids in it. We know that may be unlikely, but if the year did start out in a traditional way, we could also, if there was a spike in cases, there could be intermittent closures or other types of things like you mentioned about taking that 70 passenger bus, and even though it can fit 70 students, has to be only 35 kids on that bus. So districts are going to have to be prepared to make these adjustments and be very nimble and do it in real time.
Absolutely. And I completely agree, Kevin. And I think the other thing, Lauren, that you brought up is especially with young kids, preschool, pre-K through probably second or third grade, is that especially with a self-contained classroom or even through elementary, self-contained meaning that they're with their same teacher all day long, is that you do plan your breaks and you plan bathroom breaks and you plan. And so to your point and to your mom's point, you're right. How do you have those extra safeguards, and how do you build that into your daily schedule to ensure that you still get complete what you need to, but to keep the kids safe? And that is a lot of thinking through how do you have extra protocols for safety and get that done with 15, for your mom's case, 15 to 20 preschoolers that have a lot of needs and that aren't going to worry if they sneeze, or they aren't going to run to the, to wash their hands every few minutes. So I think your point is well taken, and really helping teachers even thinking through their daily schedule. I think it's a great point. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Ellis, this is Kay. Kay Kennedy with the Office of Finance and Operations. One of the things that we'd like to, I think, have some input on is what happens in the school district if we don't have a full complement of teachers and or staff members who are able to restart the year. Either they themselves are in a population that may be compromised due to underlying health reasons, or they may not have access to child care. So there's perhaps a number of scenarios that might impact the ability of a school district to fully staff a school, not only from the learning standpoint, but also from the operational standpoint. And I'd be interested to hear the students' thoughts around what happens if we don't have enough staff. What are the concerns there? Thank you.
All right, looks like maybe Lieutenant Governor has just joined us. Lieutenant Governor, are you in? Lieutenant Governor Coleman?
Hi.
Yep, she has joined us. So I apologize, Kay. We will get right back to your question. Students, if you guys can you hear us okay, Lieutenant Governor?
I can hear you perfectly.
Wonderful. So if you all can just take a minute, students, if you don't mind, since this is the first time for the Lieutenant Governor to join us, if you guys can just take a moment, and I know you're probably going to hate me, but if you can, if you mind switching your video on just for a second, to just introduce yourself and what school you go to and what grade you're in for Lieutenant Governor.
I'm CJ Johnson, and I go to Marshall County High School, and I'm a senior.
I'm Lauren Witt. I go to Glasgow High School, and I'm a senior.
Hi, I'm Josh Griffith, and I go to Russell Independent Schools, and I'm a senior.
Hi, I'm Reese Dickin, and I go to Barron County High School, and I'm a junior.
Hi, I'm Sam Smith, and I'm a sophomore at Davis County.
Hello, I'm Roheen Dutt. I'm a sophomore at DuPont Manual High School.
Hi, I'm Madeline Blankenship, and I'm a sophomore at Pulaski County High School.
Hi, I'm Sarah Davenport. I'm a senior at Fleming County High School.
Hi, I'm Caleb Spencer. I'm a senior at Wolf County High School.
I'm Lauren Shackelford. I'm a junior at Corbin High School.
Anna, are you on? I thought I saw her on. Anna from Campbell.
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
I'm Anna Polgears. I'm from Campbell County, and I'm a senior.
Okay. All right. Did I miss anybody? Soyana, are you on?
Yeah, sorry, I think my mic was muted.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Soliana, and I'm a sophomore at Eastern High School.
Okay. And I think I've got everybody. Nicole Arnett. Think Nicole?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Nicole is joining us from the Kentucky School for the Blind. And I think that is everyone. We also have a couple of visitors. If you want to introduce yourselves from Fleming County.
Hi, my name is Peyton Hall. I'm a junior at Fleming County High School, and I'm representing the Kentucky Student Council Association.
All right. Anybody else? All right. So I just wanted to give the Lieutenant Governor an opportunity to have a chance to hear from you all, or and I know you guys aren't very talkative this morning, or if she wanted to share a message with you just about, I know this school year has been obviously a little rough on you all, and we've been talking to you about, NTI, and for many of you, since this is a very senior heavy council, the impact on graduation and activities and things like that. So Lieutenant Governor, if you wanted to have an opportunity to talk with them, if you wanted to do that first and then open it up for them.
I'd be happy to. Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of you for stepping up and being leaders, not just in your school and your community, but across the state, because I can tell you that the folks at KDE and everyone in the education community appreciate your input. Many of you may or may not know that I'm a teacher. I used to teach high school civics and went on to become, I coached basketball as well, and then went on to become an assistant principal. And that's when then Attorney General Andy Beshear asked me to run for office with him. And so my entire career has been spent working with high school students. So you guys are my favorite. Don't tell anybody I said that, but high school is my favorite. And I can't help but think about the way that this year has gone for you, especially for those of you who are seniors. Our entire world has been turned upside down. The way that we work, the way that we socialize, the way that we shop for groceries even has completely changed. And none of us were prepared for it because, who would be prepared for a worldwide pandemic? But I have to say that of all the sectors of our communities who have responded with the most resilience and hope, it's the education community, and it's because of the students, because you all have taken this situation that's not the best situation and you've made the most of it. And so for those of you seniors who missed out on your senior prom and your graduation is going to be very different than probably you had imagined, our hearts go out to you, because that's a rite of passage and a tradition that so many of us get to take part in. And so for those of you who are not seniors on this council, when you get that opportunity one day, don't take it for granted, because I think so many of us just assume it's going to happen at the same time every year, because it has. And so you have learned that, sometimes that can be taken away without any notice. So I hope that those of you who are not seniors learn from this, and you take every day and make the most of it. And for you seniors, this is, even though it's going to be a time in your life that you couldn't have imagined, I promise you it'll be one that you never forget, because this will be, the class that we talk about for years and years and years to come, because you all will have made a sacrifice that will have saved lives across Kentucky. And so for that, we will be grateful. So with that, I will kind of pause, and if you all have questions or comments that you would like for me to hear, I'm happy to take any advice or concern that you have, and I will take it to the governor. You can ask the folks at KDE. That's what I'm good at. That's why we have that relationship, and Governor Beshear has been a wonderful partner in supporting public education because of you. It's because of the students. And so don't think for 1 minute that your voice isn't heard and your voice doesn't matter, because it does.
All right, guys, don't be shy. It doesn't even have to be COVID related. It could be anything else.
This is Josh Griffith from Russell. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Josh.
This is Josh Griffith from Russell High School, and I would just say the most disappointing thing is being a senior is probably the graduation from a lot of the people that I've talked to. And we understand and everything that it's something that just has to be done, but just graduating virtually, I think, is how it's been said. It's just not exactly what you look forward to.
I don't understand what you're going through, but I understand why you feel that way. Because I couldn't imagine being a senior and getting the news that you all have gotten. So can you tell me how your high school is going to do your graduation now? Because I know different schools have different practices.
So the way that mine's going to do it is we signed up to be able to register for a graduation slot, so that way we can still come in and walk across our stage, and our principal and vice principal will be there, and if we want them to, they will still hand us our diploma, and they're going to record it, and then they're going to put them all together in a recording, and that'll be our graduation.
Okay, that sounds like a lot of schools that I've talked to, kind of how they're going to process their graduation too. So it sounds like at least it'll be similar in that way, at least. But I really am sorry that you all are having to go through that. I really am, and your families, because I know that's a time that your family looks forward to as well.
This is CJ Johnson from Marshall County High School, and I'm not gonna lie, my high school's been pretty different. Everyone kind of knows what happened my sophomore year in 2018, 23rd of January, but everything's been kind of messed up, but through it all, I've got stronger. I've got through it. Everyone at my school's got through it. So this is just another kind of bump in the road, but so I just feel like the whole state's going to get stronger through this whole COVID-19 thing, and through that, it's just pretty awesome. Even though I won't get a lot of stuff that people have, but I have a lot of other stuff that people won't have.
And that's a great way to look at it. And I have to say that especially what students in your school have gone through, and the way that you have responded has been nothing short of remarkable. I heard your superintendent and your principal speak the first time that they talked publicly about what happened, and it brought me to tears. I was in a principal meeting, and I think about how you all have responded at such a young age, something you should have never, ever had to go through. And what an example that you've set for being resilient and responding to a situation, again, that is so tragic. And so, you know, the light of Kentucky was on you all for probably circumstances that you didn't want, but certainly you served as a great example and a school that was full of role models for the rest of the state. So thank you for that.
And CJ, you have a younger brother that's going to be, or that is in high school still, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Any other students? Okay.
Well, thank you all so much. And thank you for advising KDE and helping them to think through the challenges we face from your perspective, because you guys are the reason that we do what we do every day. So best of luck to you. And thank you again for everything that you're doing to improve education across Kentucky.
Thank you for your time, Lieutenant Governor. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we will go back to where we were talking about before, which was with Miss Kay Kennedy. And she was, Kate, did you want to repeat where we were with your last question?
Sure. Thanks, Tony. This is Kay Kennedy again with the Office of Finance and Operations. And the areas that we are concerned about are those support areas that actually make the teaching and learning possible. Our areas concerned with student health, transportation, facilities, and food service. So it's with that lens on that we seek your input on how we can get schools reopened in the fall and what are the important factors. Not only, I mean, when I think about the two activities that we've been asked to do since this whole thing started, it's wash your hands and social distance, right? So as we bring kids back to school, how can we just accomplish those two basic fundamental activities? That's going to be a challenge for a lot of places. And then when we think about all the activities that go into the start of school, think about those kids that have to have health and wellness checkups, maybe have to have a dental exam, have to have vaccinations brought up to date. And then how are we going to treat those kids who are medically fragile? And I'm sure that, you know, there are considerations for, you know, expanding the home hospital concept where we can teach those kids at home. But again, that's an extension more or less of the whole NTI thing, and can we actually provide services to those kids? So, you know, within those areas of operations, what are your thoughts around how we get schools reopened? And I'll leave it for your questions. Thank you.
This is CJ Johnson from Marshall County. I think going on to, I think that we call it homebound, which is where you're on like an extended time at home. I think that by that time, NTI is going to be pretty good, almost kind of as good as it's going to be. So like, I don't think that's like awful in comparison to like if someone needs to stay at home. Or I do have a question though. Do you think there's going to be an option for kids that don't feel comfortable coming to school to stay home?
I think that's a question that school districts have to address. I mean, if you know, I've heard concerns around, especially students who may be living in a home with grandparents or those that are in the vulnerable population of 65 and older. And what's the concern about them carrying virus back and forth and the potential to infect, you know, the medically fragile at home. So it's a very good point, and one that school districts have to give some consideration to. There right now, you know, home hospital allows school districts to maintain those services to typically critically ill children who really can't get outside the home. But if that, you know, needs to be expanded, it's certainly something we need to think about. And thank you for that comment and question.
We also sought some changes to the home hospital law this session to make it a little more, I won't say easier, but more
technology friendly for one, I think.
Technology friendly, yes, and to make sure that we're relying obviously on medical opinions of treating medical providers of students.
Okay, if you have thoughts around any of those operational areas, please follow Tony's guidance to get those to us, and appreciate your consideration. Thanks.
And I will say, Kay, thank you for that. We found that your all's exit slip material is that the feedback you leave on your exit slips, it's as informative as what you provide us in person. So thank you for doing that. Know that those get read and get added into the feedback. So as you are thinking of additional things, sometimes I know when I'm on a call, I often say, well, I wish I would have said this or that. That's what your exit slip is for. And then, this is also relevant for you seniors, that some of the similar things we're trying to tackle with going back to school, you're going to be encountering, of course, in your post-secondary, whether it's college or other trainings that you may be enduring. And then I think we're going to go into a world of where there are multiple delivery models for education, and we have to be nimble and to be able to switch back and forth. I think we're going to see more and more of that. And having those electronic and platforms that you will probably also see in college learning platforms, and reliance upon distance learning as well as sitting in a classroom. And there are benefits to both.
I just wanted to go ahead and tell you that I will be sharing the exit slip a little bit ahead of time, so you guys can start filling that out if you'd like to while the discussion is going on, because I know that you all are busy, and I know that some of you have honors things that are going on and you're trying to do a lot of things, especially our seniors. But there are several things I'd like you to make sure you fill out. If even if you can't answer some of the questions, that's fine. I will say to our seniors, we do need your current address, because the KDE leadership team does have something that we would like to send to you. And so we do need to make sure that we have your current address, as just a little token of our appreciation for your service to the council, and a congratulations to the class of 2020. So just please be sure to fill that out and provide that feedback. It's very valuable. We will move to the next item, unless we had any other questions. Actually, we did have some representatives from the Office of Special Education and Early Learning also that were in on this call, correct?
Yes, this is Sylvia Starkey. I'm here for Greta Hilton, and then Bill Buchanan is also here for preschool as well.
Did you all want to add anything to the conversation?
Sure. We were just going to kind of talk a little bit about reentry and some of the concerns that we have and things that have been happening in special education. So the main things that we're looking for in special education include, were students provided with equity and access to the correct curriculum? So when we're looking at how they were provided service during NTI, those are the things that we're looking for. And it's really going to be important for us, for students with disabilities, to look into the past to determine, help us figure out how we're going to do this in the future. What we do, the standard for any kind of missed services for students, you guys mentioned homebound students or medically fragile students who aren't able to necessarily get online and do NTI instruction. The standard for that is what we call compensatory education. Compensatory education is provided for students when they miss services. Sometimes it gets confused with, which is what we call ESY, which stands for Extended School Year Services. And the standard for that is actually recoupment and retention of skills that were already taught. And so ESY doesn't really apply in an NTI situation. But compensatory education would. So for any student who wasn't provided services during their special education services during NTI, when we go back into the future, one of the big things districts are going to have to think about is, how do we provide compensatory services for those students while we're still providing them with their regular services? We're actually working on developing some guidance to help support districts on how do we document that and what kind of meetings do they have to do. And what we're learning is it's a little bit too soon for us to determine if compensatory services are needed or relevant, because a denial of FAPE is free, appropriate, and public education. It's too soon to determine if that has occurred yet, because part of deciding whether FAPE has been given to a student is determining reasonable progress. And so it's hard to know what does reasonable progress look like until we're back in a school setting and we can really see how did they progress during the time that they were out of the school building. Another thing that's really come up is the cost of compensatory education. So we know that compensatory education costs money. So we have to pay people to go and provide those services to the student. And so we're encouraging districts to just be mindful of how they're spending funds on compensatory education. There's this thing in special education, it's called maintenance of effort. Maintenance of effort, just basically in its simplest form, is asking districts to spend the same amount of money this year on special education than they spent the last year and all the years before that. And so when we talk about things like the CARES funding and the GEARS funding, all of those come with requirements to increase maintenance of effort. When we talk about maintenance of effort, if you spend additional local funds on that, it actually increases the amount you have to spend in the following years. So we're encouraging districts to carefully consider whether they want to reserve parts of their CARES and GEARS money to pay for compensatory education, but it really ends up being a catch-22 on both ends, because sometimes if you spend too much money of that CARES funding, it could also, it would decrease the amount you spent normally, and you don't want that either. So we're encouraging districts to contact staff in the Office of Special Education and Early Learning to help them work through how to spend CARES funding and CARES and GEARS money and their local funds to be able to work that out so it doesn't affect their local maintenance of efforts requirements. We're also talking a lot about contingency planning. So we know that a lot of students weren't provided with equity or access. And how do we ensure that those things don't happen in the future? And how can we look into that to develop a plan that we know that if this were to happen again, we know exactly how we're going to provide the contingency stuff to students. So how are we going to move forward? What are the decisions? How often are they going to receive speech in a pandemic versus how often are they going to receive it at school? And so we're also working to develop some guidance around all of that to make sure that students are given what they needed, and we're planned ahead in the future for those. And then right now, the Office of Special Education and Early Learning is really working to do some weekly webinars with special education cooperatives and early childhood regional training centers to help really answer some of the most prevalent questions that the leaders in those areas are asking. So, we'd be interested to see if you all have any ideas for things that you think we need to be considering with special education or anything like that. And I'm actually going to throw it to Bill to talk to you a little bit about what's happening in preschool right now.
So thank you, Sylvia. If you can hear me, yes. And I want to express appreciation for the students and the leadership that you're providing and the guidance that you're providing to the department at this time. And I think it was Lauren who mentioned that her mom is a preschool teacher. So please know that we appreciate the teaching that she's providing and the preschool teachers across our state. Early childhood is the foundation of school success, and we very much appreciate her service, and as well as the comments that you've provided us this morning, and giving us some ideas to think about in terms of potential problems and concerns with reentry. Sylvia asked that I talk a little bit about preschool and early learning and early childhood. And that, let me clarify that the state-funded preschool program is for 3- and 4-year-olds with disabilities, as well as 4-year-olds based on income. And so right there is one of our concerns in terms of reentry into the fall. We may have many young children who otherwise wouldn't be eligible for the state-funded preschool who will be eligible based on their household income. And so one thing school districts will need to do is think about recruitment, think about screening, think about enrollment, and making sure that we're reaching every eligible child and providing them with meaningful access to state-funded preschool services and early childhood services. And so this will require thoughtful consideration made to partnerships. What can school districts do to effectively and innovatively partner with Head Start and childcare to make sure that all eligible children are receiving access to services? And the services themselves, of course, the instruction, and it was mentioned about what might this look like in terms of a classroom, a preschool classroom. Need to have some consideration made about room arrangement and making sure that rooms are cleaned and disinfected. Have to give thought not only about transportation, but also about food service, what that might look like, and playgrounds, and making sure that there's social distancing that occurs in our preschool classrooms as well. So these are some of the challenges. In terms of the supports that we're providing, Sylvia mentioned that we're providing training and professional development to our preschool coordinators and our teachers through webinars that are held weekly. And those resources are available on our website. And we're also giving thought about guidance to school districts, providing school districts with guidance on how to use the CARES and GEARS funding to support the state-funded preschool program and services as we move into the fall. So again, I appreciate your leadership and I'm eager to hear more from you about the concerns that you have and ways in which we could better support school districts.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we will move on to our next topic, which is mental health. And we have Dr. Damian Sweeney, which you know Damian. He's visited us the last couple of meetings, and he's going to do a quick check-in with you all. And then also we have Miriam's, I think, is Miriam on?
Yes, she is.
Yes. Okay, great. And they will be joining us now.
Thank you. Let me pull up this PowerPoint real quick. Okay. All right. Can somebody audibly let me know if you see it?
It's up. Yep.
All right.
It's up.
Awesome. Okay. So you know me, Miriam. I'll let you introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, I'm Miriam Silman, and I'm with the Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental and Intellectual Disabilities. And I do a lot of work also with KDE. I am a trauma specialist, and my job over at DBH-DID is the Trauma Informed Care Program Administrator. And my consultation with KDE is around integrating mental health and trauma sensitive and trauma responsive practices into school settings. So ironically, I also have a background around pandemic because I did a big study for the federal government on pandemic about 10 years ago. So I looked at how kids and families responded to pandemics. This is right up my alley. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and experiences today.
Awesome. Thank you, Miriam. Before we jump into this, we do want to open up with a quick stretch. So most of you guys are seated. We see some of you kids are in a couch, sitting on your couch or in bed. So we're just going to do some upper body stuff. So we're just going to take one arm and we're just going to stretch it like this. So grab your elbow and just stretch. And this is for the adults too. Believe me, you'll appreciate it. So we'll take that left arm and stretch it back. All right. When you release it, we're just going to open our arms wide, and then we're going to bring in the other one. Okay. You can see my little glitches. All right. And last time, we're going to open it up, open wide, and then we're just going to go straight up. Stretch. And release. Okay. Then let's just take 3 deep breaths. So 1, 2, 3, deep inhale. And let's exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. All right. So remember, I'm not only talking to the kids this morning, I'm also talking to the adults, so I hope you adults participate as well. Let me see. I'm doing this wrong, sorry. We're going to do a check-in real quick with you. All right, so in your chat box, if you can just let us know. Hold on 1 second, sorry. Okay, hopefully you can see that now. Can you see a smiley face and a sad face?
Not yet.
PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Not
And remember yesterday we were having troubles changing it in slideshow. It may need to be in just normal view.
Yeah, okay. All right, here we go. This should work better. Okay. All right. So, so in your chat box, everybody, if you will just let us know. Remember, vulnerability helps build community. So, so it's okay not to be okay right now. So just let us know where you are on the scale on this happiness rating. Where would you put yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of your own personal happiness right now during this unusual time? So go ahead and put that in the chat box, please. Thank you, CJ. Thanks, Tony. Lauren, thank you. So we got some pretty high scores already. We got a lot of 7s, 8, 5. Okay. All right. Give another 30 seconds or so. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Sylvia and Kelly. Peyton, thank you. Karen, Paige. All right. So I see a lot of, it looks like we've got a lot of, we've got 5 through 8 is what I'm seeing. I haven't seen anybody below below 5. But again, honesty with yourself, honesty with others is really, really important at this time. Being open with how you're feeling and just kind of where you're at is going to be really, really important as well. And then opening the door for friends and family to do the same with you, being honest and open about where they're at. Okay, so we talked about how most of us are 5, 6, 7, or 8. Now, what would you, and all I'm looking for is 1 or 2 words in the chat box. What would it take for you if you were at a 5 to get 2 points higher to a 7? If you were at a 6, what would it take for you to get to an 8? Or a 7 to get to a 9, or an 8 to get to a 10? So what is one thing that might help you improve this rating? So go ahead and put that in the chat box, please. See friends? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, CJ, baseball season for sure. Missing sports. Okay. All right. So I'm seeing a lot of just we're longing for that human interaction. We're longing to get back to our routines. I was an athlete. I was a soccer player, so missing my season would have been really, really difficult. See my son graduate, Tony, for sure. Marie says seeing friends, a lot of that. Okay, very good. So the last step of this is, you know, there's nothing usual about this time, right? So we know that we can't wave a magic wand and all of a sudden you can go and start hanging out with folks, or we can, get back into baseball season, or we can say prom is back on, or there are going to be regular graduation practices. But again, just like I asked you at the last time we met, we do see you guys as school leaders and community leaders. And my hope is that you can not only help raise awareness about some of the issues that you're seeing, but also that you can help others that are dealing with some of the same struggles. So if that means creating some different Zoom opportunities with friends, or FaceTime opportunities with friends, if that means going out to the backyard, or going and hitting a baseball, whatever that means for you, thinking creatively is something that we'd like you to consider for the future. Okay, so we don't have a lot of time, but we do want to get in now some different that all people are going through, and we're going to specifically talk about. We're going to generalize the population, and we're going to drill down to students and teachers, and then we're going to talk about ways that schools can help, and then ways that we can not only help each other overcome stress, but also become resilient. So you may realize, this is for everybody again, so you may realize that there's a lot more anxiety about exposure and illness. One thing that we are recognizing with folks is that what might have seemed like just a small cough, or maybe just a headache, or maybe just a low-grade fever, might really be concerning to some people who are anxious that they've been infected. So there's a lot of anxiety about the coronavirus. Limited connections to others, just like we saw in the chat box just now. Limited connection to others and limited support system is also a very big stressor for folks. Lack of cognitive stimulation or monotony, right? So you feel like all you can do right now is do your virtual classes and then turn on Netflix or something like that. Limited access to normal coping strategies. Family members who are stressed, right? Some of that stress may be a result of financial stress or limited resources, like we talked about earlier with food. Losses and grief, right? Those losses may have come as a result of the pandemic, or they may have come as a result of something else. And then just there's so much uncertainty right now. I heard one of the students say earlier, we don't even know if we're gonna be going back into school in the fall. So there's a lot of uncertainty around this time, which creates more and more stress for all of us. When we talk about students, signs of stress in students, some students can really cling. They can turn kind of whiny and just really have a hard time grappling with everything going on, becoming tearful, frightened, and anxious. We have students that can be agitated, hyperactive, and overreactive, right? So somebody can say something and kids might take it the wrong way. Folks can be irritable, impatient, aggressive, and angry. They can feel withdrawn, disengaged, really tired, depressed, sad, hopeless, and suicidal. Obviously, we're very concerned about those folks that are getting to that point where there is depression and suicidality. Poor concentration, limited comprehension, and poor memory can be other signs of stress right now. And then vague physical complaints, right? So, man, my stomach just keeps on bothering me, or I just have this headache that just won't go away. We know that kids aren't sleeping as regularly as maybe they would have if this pandemic did not exist. So kids that might just be fearful again, and because of that, they're experiencing sleep disturbance, appetite disturbance as well. We are also seeing kids that just are seeking attention, and this is completely normal, but it's also a sign of stress. So for our students, what are you seeing right now? So I've got this big list on here, but what other signs of stress are you seeing amongst your peers? Go ahead and put that in the chat box, please.
Or even things that you're seeing in younger siblings or cousins or.
Yeah. Loss of motivation, AP testing, yeah. Yeah, burnout for sure. CJ, I'd be interested in how you're seeing withdrawal from friends manifest, and then you seem like you have such an outgoing personality, CJ. So I wonder how you're kind of helping bring those kids back in that are withdrawing. Or anybody. Grades worry some students. Okay, sure. Josh, just tired all the time. Testing, exhaustion, withdrawal, lack of drive, losing creativity. Yes. Okay. Yeah, Madeline, for sure. That no consistent schedule. Karen, absolutely, with the withdrawal. Seeking attention. How does that look? I just see Spencer, but how does the seeking attention look? Okay, while you're continuing to type, I'll continue here. Your staff is also stressed, right? You guys are high schoolers, but sometimes and I taught at the high school level, and I was a school counselor at the high school level, and sometimes we would be at the high school on a Saturday given the ACT, and we would have parent phone calls on Saturdays. We would have kids call in. It felt almost like people forgot that educators were humans, and sometimes they felt like educators just lived at the school and that's all they did. But your staff is stressed, right? They're experiencing anxiety. They're fearful, right, for your safety. They want to make sure that all of their kids come back in the fall, that they don't lose anybody, that their colleagues all come back in the fall and healthy. They're experiencing depression and sadness. All of us feel very sad, a deep sadness for you seniors who we know are just really struggling with some of the things that you're missing out on. However, we're choosing to look optimistically at that. And I loved what the Lieutenant Governor said, that you are in the class that will be remembered forever for what you've had to overcome and how you've really helped our state. Our staff can be withdrawn. They can feel less engaged. They can be absent. They can be irritable, impatient, frustrated, angry, explosive, and overreactive, agitated, poor concentration, and poor memory. They can have those vague physical complaints that we discussed. They can feel overwhelmed, confused, difficulty with problem solving or making decisions right now, and just the same as kids, right? There can also be that loss of creativity and lack of motivation. Sometimes for our students, sometimes that little note that you send to a teacher that says, hey, Dr. Ellis or Dr. Foster or Dr. Brown or whomever, Ms. Dodd, I just want you to know that I really appreciate all that you're doing for us. That can go a long way and re-inspire some of those teachers. So that might be something that you consider. There's also risk for increased stress response. So there's recent loss, so if somebody's experienced recent loss or history of a significant loss, this whole pandemic where we're really fearful about going outside and being exposed can really trigger us. Past or current exposure to trauma. We talk all the time about how we're really, really concerned about anybody that's had to overcome trauma or endure trauma, and then we know for a fact that there are many people that are consistently enduring even more trauma now that they're at home all of the time. People with pre-existing behavioral health concerns or a history of such concerns. People that with limited support systems. So what I call kids that live in unloving homes, right? We're really concerned about their risk for increased stress response. Again, feeling of isolation, difficulty with attachment and relationships, poor coping skills and supports is another risk for increased stress response. So if you wouldn't mind putting this in the chat box, do you think there's more substance abuse happening among your peers at this time? And if so, how can we help? Substance abuse is another poor coping skill that people, kids and adults experience. And if this is something that you think people are experiencing more and more because of the isolation, then we want to figure out ways that we can help. So go ahead and put that in the chat box if you're seeing that or know of people experiencing that. Coming back to CJ, I appreciate that. So you're asking kids to do something that they enjoy, whether that is through video games or a quick phone call. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, well, you guys put that in the chat box. I do want you to know that what we're telling schools is that we want them to become aware and really to discuss what's happening, what happened, and where kids are at. So we really want them to have open dialogue with their students about, you know, where they're at on a social and emotional level. We want them to help build resilience in their students, and then we want them to plan for crises. We want them to look, right? So observe student behavior, whether students seem like they're happy or sad or just really going through a range of emotions. We want them to be listening, right, for any of those cues, and then linking kids, right? Linking them to a mental health professional in the school, whether that's a school counselor, a school social worker, a school psychologist, or even a Frisky, who are amazing people. And then if needed, if kids are experiencing suicidality, maybe even we even want them to link them to a community agency.
And Damien, I just want to hop in for a minute
Go
and
ahead.
say that that look and listen especially is not just for adults to kids, it's for everybody to everybody else. So this is part of what I see you guys saying in the chat box, is that you're really paying attention to each other and you're observing and you're listening carefully and you're also asking. And that's really the first step in any kind of mental health first aid or psychological first aid. And we know that those things matter and they work. And so that's just to say that's part of us reaching out to one another across in all different ways.
Yes. And Miriam, just so you know, I asked this group to start thinking about different campaigns that they may begin in their own school communities, in their own communities, whether that has to do with mental health, with building resilience among their peers, et cetera. So I think that's a really great point you just made. I'm going to finish with this. Another way of looking is, you know, seeing what are the practical needs of my peers, of the people in my community, what are the psychosocial needs, what are the academic and professional needs. Listening, we need to be listening. Our schools need to be listening to students and families. They need to be listening to the staff and the community. And then again, linking kids to internal resources, whether that's the mental health practitioners I mentioned earlier, or those community agencies.
Great. So I'm going to pick up here and talk a little bit about ways that we can build resilience. And for a long time, people thought that resilience was a matter of luck, that some people just were naturally resilient and others weren't. And we now know that actually that's not true. Resilience is a learned ability, and it's something that we can nurture in ourselves and we can nurture in each other. So just like anything else, we can practice and take deliberate steps to become more resilient. And some of the areas that can build resilience during this time of social distancing are here on the slide. So we want to think about ways to connect. And I know that that's also a source of where we feel isolated or lonely or can make us feel down and stressed. But there are also ways that we can be creative. Other areas to build resilience are safety, taking care of our bodies through things like nutrition and exercise, competence, feeling like we're good at something, empowerment, feeling like we have a sense of control over something because there's so much we don't have control over right now, and this concept of self-regulation, which really means our ability to be aware of our emotions and our thoughts and to feel like we can control them and be in charge of them, because that makes us feel more like we have some sense of mastery and we're in control. And it also just helps us to be able to feel better through the day. So next slide, Damien. Sorry, I forgot I wasn't controlling this. So let's dig a little bit deeper and think about that. So CJ, I really appreciated what you said about being persistent. And I said this yesterday on a call with adults in the education community, that the idea that we're going to do outreach to one another doesn't mean just one phone call. It means over and over again reaching out, because sometimes people who are withdrawing just don't have the energy, or they're feeling so bad that they're not able to reach back out to us. So if we play this game of, well, I called last time, so they should call this time, that may not be helpful. So being persistent is really, really important, especially to folks who you have some concerns about. Finding a buddy or connecting with a mentor or becoming a mentor to somebody else could be really, really helpful. It makes us feel good about doing something. It also gives us some accountability. So maybe for some of us who are not feeling very motivated, or somebody said that they noticed some laziness, which probably is more a lack of motivation. Can you go back for one, please? No, I'm sorry. There we are. Yeah. Connection. Okay. And that lack of motivation can come out as, we need like a little push, a little nudge sometimes. So that's a really great way to do that, whether it's something academic or something for fun. And so checking in, and that's check in, check out is something that we're really encouraging schools to think about when it's time to go back to school. So I just want to stop for a minute and see if anybody has any thoughts about connection. One thing that I would encourage you to do is to be creative as you think about what you can do over that connection. So you've probably been playing video games and just been Zoom calling and chatting. Are there other kinds of things that you can do together? Can you cook and eat a meal together with somebody, even grandparents or other relatives in your family? Can you learn something from a friend who's has a skill or a talent that you don't have? Can they teach you how to do something over Zoom or at a distance? There may be some new ways of using that time to connect. So I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts about connection. Pop it in the chat box. It definitely has changed.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
Okay, so the persistence thing, I got a lot of pushback early on from the person that was withdrawn from me. And like at first I was a little disturbed and kind of like, wow, that's kind of different. Like it would kind of make me feel bad. But then like I thought, I was like, wait a second, he's withdrawing. So like I gotta kind of push a little bit harder so he knows that I'm trying to give him attention. That's really what he wanted. And like he just never really got that attention from anyone else. He just kind of got that casual, hey, how you doing, that kind of stuff. He wanted someone to actually invest time in him. So I think eventually after time, he really started opening up and talking, and then he's doing pretty well now. I mean, I talked to him for 2-3 hours last night, which it's really encouraging to see someone who's kind of through this whole quarantine kind of gotten up in his spirits in that way.
Thank you, CJ. That's a really, really, I think, important example of why this matters. Yeah. Yep. Not giving up. Good. So when we think about safety, we're not just thinking about physical safety, but also psychological safety. And one of the first things to feeling good is to recognize and being honest about how we're feeling. So just as Damien did at the beginning of this, is to do those check-ins with ourselves and to model that for others and to do it with others. And so maybe one of the things that you can do with friends or with an accountability buddy is that you guys check in even by text each morning and say, how am I feeling today? And maybe morning and evening, especially with somebody who you're a little bit concerned about, or if you feel like you're not doing well and you want to work on that in some way. We talked about the importance of looking and asking and listening. And another thing that we want to do is we want to really think about how are we letting our feelings out? We don't want to keep them all bottled up inside. That's like having a can of pop on the counter, and every time something happens, it's like somebody shakes it, and then all of a sudden somebody doesn't know that it's been shaken all day, and they come and they open it and it spews everywhere. So we don't want to have those explosive reactions. We want to be letting our emotions out gradually, but we have to have words to be able to do that, or ways to get it out. Maybe it's writing in a journal, maybe it's doing some artwork, maybe it's going for a run or doing some vigorous exercise. Maybe it's talking to somebody. It's all kinds of ways that we can get our feelings and our thoughts out. And it's important for us to do that and to also demonstrate for other people in our circle how to do that and encourage them to share their feelings with us as well. When we think about taking care of our bodies, that's pretty obvious, good snacks and exercise. So I'm not going to harp on that. We're encouraging schools to really think about that for when you guys get back to school. Next slide.
Miriam, I was just told we need to start wrapping up, so I'm going to speed you up a little bit. Sorry.
Good, we got good. Okay, so these things, I just want to say something about competence. And the idea of competence is something that I really want you to think about. Competence makes us be resilient because it gives us a sense of feeling positive. And so I want you to think about things that you are good at, but also maybe things that you aren't as good at, that this could be a chance to start to work on and learn to do better, because that may be a great way to get through this time. Empowerment is, I think, something you all are familiar with, because the idea of having a voice matters a lot, but also having some choices and being flexible. So one of the things is to ask sometimes for some choices about things, and that may help you to feel better. Self-regulation comes in the form of being aware of our emotions as well as our thinking. And I can't tell you enough that paying attention to that, but also learning to do some short mindful practices can be very, very helpful to both how we feel and our ability to concentrate and think clearly and make good decisions, and also be creative. So there's lots of resources out there for mindfulness, and I would encourage you to check some of them out. They're pretty much free right now. So they should be available to you. Why don't you go on to the next slide? We've encouraged schools to really think about crisis planning. And if you have an opportunity to contact your school and ask how they're planning for return to school or managing over the summer and be a part of that, we really encourage them to include student and youth voice in that. So just want you to be aware that that's something that we're really stressing. Next slide, please. And we've kind of alluded to this, but compassion is really important, not just for others, but also for ourselves. So we really want you to think about that. And we encourage everybody to ask what's happened that's causing us to feel the way we are or behave the way we are, and causing others to feel and behave the way they are, but also to think about what's strong with others and what's strong with us. So to find those strengths, as CJ really talked about at the beginning, and how important that is, and that can be an incredible building block for resilience. I have just put in the chat box 3 links to 3 videos that have been put out during this time of COVID-19 that feature young adults. One is about college students, one is about high school students, and one was actually made by high school students. So I just encourage you to check those out. There are some nice coping strategies in there that may be helpful for you and some of your friends. Next slide. And here's our contact information if there's anything else. So we're eager for any feedback through the exit slip or in the chat box right now.
Okay, great. Students, I know you guys provided a lot of valuable feedback in the chat. If you want to continue to provide feedback in the chat, or I did just send the feedback form in the exit slip. So if you want to let me know, if someone can just give me a yay or a nay, can you access that slip? Sometimes I forget to check boxes.
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure. And then we're going to move on to the next part of the agenda, which is our last part. And I want to welcome our representative. I think is it 1 or 2? I'm not, I know we had one introduce himself earlier from the Kentucky Student Council Association in Fleming County, and then the advisor as well. We've been trying to do more with student voice, obviously. You all are all leaders. Just to give you an example, we are accepting applications for the Student Advisory Council. Since we have 14 seniors that are leaving the council, we have 85 applications for your spots right now, 85. So there's a lot of interest in student voice, and we're trying to do more with this with the council. And I'm just incredibly pleased and very honored that we have a lot of students that are willing to serve in this role, and we're trying to give you more opportunities to do that because your voice is so valuable to us and to others here in the Commonwealth. So with that, I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves and what they do, and give you some examples of voice.
I'll introduce myself first before Peyton gets started. My name's Paige Slose, and I am the
Executive Director of the Kentucky Student Council Association, and it's my pleasure to be here and to listen to you guys. Peyton's going to be taking over, but Sarah Davenport is one of your own, and she is one of the founders. So thank you. Thank you for having us.
So hi, my name is Peyton Hall. Like I said, I'm a junior at Fleming County High School, and I'm one of our founders, and I will be the 2020-21 Kentucky Student Council Association president. And so we're really happy to not only advocate for the Kentucky Student Council Association today, but we're also super happy to just get to share our message and what we're here to do and everything like that. So to start, we always want to start with the why. So why is there a need for the Kentucky Student Council Association? So our local council at Fleming County High School started around 8 years ago. And so for the past 4 years, we have really worked with other councils around the state, and we have trained them. So since we have succeeded as a council, we are working to build up other councils around the state. Past student council officers have really wanted to go back and reach out to those students. We have wanted to create relationships and network with them, just like any other organization networks on a state level. We wanted to reunite with those student councils that we had assisted. We had always poured into other people. We have always given everything that we've got, but we've really struggled to get back. We've run out of ideas and things like that. So there's obviously a national organization, the National Student Council Association. And so we reached out to them first, and we found out that there was no Kentucky Student Council Association, but there was a state council in every single state except for Kentucky. And that put Kentucky last on the list. And we knew that Kentucky students were not last. We knew that the students that we have and the student leaders that were in the state were better than any other state in the country. And so that for sure fired us up. And so on September 27th, we declared it with nationals that we were the State Student Council Association. So pretty much we checked the box, paid a few bucks, and we were the state council. But from there, where do we move? We had never done this before. I don't think we never dreamed of doing this before. So what do we do next? So from then, we have hosted 3 events. We've had our first ever fall conference on October 25th, and we worked with Morehead State student government. And we started with 5 schools. We reached out to just schools that were around the Morehead area. So that maybe if we would have reached out to more schools, we would have had more. But at that moment, we had 5 schools. That was perfect. We weren't even a month old yet, and we've got 5 schools that are already interested. And then a few months later in December, we held an event called Rally Day. So this was sent out to the entire state. We met with principals, superintendents, everything like that, and it was held at Fleming County High School. And we had over 20 schools that attended this event. So we are a little over 3 months, and we have already got 20 schools involved that want to be a part of this association. And then in March, the same day that Kentucky had its first coronavirus case, we had our first spring conference at Center College, and we had almost 200 students, which was once again amazing. It's not even 6 months old, and we've already grown this much. So we started with 5 schools on October 25th, and now we have over 20 paid schools. We have split up the state of Kentucky into 11 regions, and we have called almost every school in the state to help get them involved and to help meet with them and to really share our message. So for sure, we have been very busy since September. But we have not allowed this global pandemic to stop us. So since we've been out of school, we've been having weekly meetings with around 40 to 50 students across the state. So we're as fired up as ever to create this relationship with students and to really make sure that student voice is advocated for on these levels. We have done that to partner with the Pritchard Committee Student Voice team. So we've really worked with them to get our message out and to get other people involved and just to share the voices of our students. We are also in a formal partnership with the Kentucky Association of School Administrators. So this is going to be a great partnership that is going to allow us to get our message out, but to also work with administrators across the state. We want to make a difference in every state, community, and school. So what we really work to do is we are an authentic student council. And so that isn't just class presidents for each class. It's nothing like that. What we do is we create a student council where students are doing the work. There are so many programs that we have at our school that in other schools administrators do. But now, since it's happening in Fleming County High School by students, there's a lot better impact on it. So for instance, our treasurer, which is Sarah Davenport, she does all of the paperwork. Our advisor does not touch the POs. She does not touch the fundraiser request. Our students are empowered to make this difference, and our administration looks at us on the equal pedestal as they look at themselves. So what our goal is that we spread the culture and climate in each state, or each school. We change it. We create that empowerment of students and create the student voice in the school that administrators need to hear. We have developed a plan and curriculum that we share with a purpose. We focus on our 6 key words, which stand for SERVES, because we believe that our goal is to serve the schools and the state of Kentucky. So those are service, engagement, recognition, voice, enrichment, and support. So how we spread our message and how we spread into schools across the state is through trainings. So of course we've held conferences and we held workshops, but we actually go to schools and schools come to us and we train the students within their school. And we stress that with those students that just because this has worked at my school doesn't mean it's going to work at yours. Make sure that you make it at home. Make sure you make it to what your students understand and what will make the biggest impact on your school. For instance, our student council runs over 100 different programs in our school. So those are programs that administration may be focusing on within your school, but now they're being done by students. So to go through, the big reason why we're here is, yes, to promote KISCA, but we also want to help you and we also want to help your schools. So I'm going to direct this kind of towards the students, but we want to know if you can do something at your school. Our student council started after a school-wide walkout. They were pretty much told that they weren't good enough. Our test scores were awful. And after that, students wanted their student voice. They wanted their voice to be heard. And so they took control and created this council that has now led into the Kentucky Student Council Association. So just in the chat, if you want to drop your school name, and then if your school has a council. And then if your school doesn't have a council, if you'll just say kind of, does your school need a council? What is needed in your school? What can we not only help you, but what can you empower your school to change? So the big way that we share and work with other schools is through a swap. We call it a sharing with a purpose. And so the big mission with that is to share ideas within other schools that will work with other schools. So for instance, the house program that we do, it's a big program and we do a swap with it to share. So I'm going to invite Mrs. Slose to kind of chime in here and add what she wants to add.
I think you did a tremendous job, Peyton. I'm just super proud that you guys chose me to be your executive director, and I'm with you. Want to help every high school, middle school, and elementary school in the state of Kentucky share their voice with their administrators.
So what we want to do, and the big reason why we really want to advocate for it today, is because we want to grow. So of course we just started in September and we've grown significantly since then. But starting next month, we're going to have 18 executive positions to students across the state. So currently we're working with students from all the way from Carlisle County, which is in far western Kentucky, to southeastern and Perry Central, all the way up north to Boone County. So we are a state organization. We work with students and we truly believe that leadership leads into an education pathway. So we want to promote councils and encourage the culture and climate change within each council. So I'm going to drop my email in the chat. And so if you ever have any questions about becoming a member or finding more information about the Kentucky Student Council Association, you can definitely email me. But if you have any questions, we want to open that up at this time as well.
I will say that the students in the Kentucky Student Council Association have done a tremendous job since the global pandemic in communication efforts, which is super hard. I know even for adults, communication is hard, but they've used multiple pathways for communication, not just Zooming, but they use a Slack communication. They use Remind text messages, and they don't just have formal meetings, which they do, but they have fun meetings, Fun Friday, mental health awareness, Zooms. So I'm super proud of that aspect too. But yeah, I would love to see how this is going to grow.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for taking the time and for contacting us and for coming and joining us for the meeting today. Did you all have any questions for Peyton or for Paige? Okay. All right. Well, he has put his number or his the information to get in contact with them is in the chat, and you also know how to get obviously in touch with me, so I can also send out the information in a follow-up email as well. And I invite you, Peyton, as well. I will send you. I'd like you to take this exit slip as well, if you don't mind. I will send if you. I think it's in the chat as well. Since you were part of this as well, if you don't mind providing your feedback, we would love to have it as well today. So just wrapping up today, we had a very full session. I hope that you all, took in a lot of the information and can think about some of the topics that we discussed. We obviously are very, very busy here at the Department of Education as we're trying to figure out what we need to do next for our students and for our schools here in the Commonwealth as we wrap up this school year, try to help our schools in the summer, and then also try to prepare our students as they return for the 2021 school year and what that's going to look like, because we know that that's going to look a lot different for a lot of students on a lot of different levels. So, we're all about trying to provide the support for not just students and families, but also for our schools. And we're just, anything that you all can do to provide feedback for us, since you are in the schools every single day, that is such an important voice. And I know that we say that a lot, but it's very, very valuable. And I know that I've mentioned this in the exit slip. Our next meeting is actually going to be on a Thursday. It's Thursday, May 21st. And I know that most of our seniors, with the exception, I think, of Jefferson County, well, actually, I think our Jefferson County ones are juniors, will have graduated already. But I would love for you all to, at least if you can, and if you are willing, to join us for that meeting. Just because we are such a heavy senior council or advisory group, just as we try to onboard our new advisory group, I believe that we will be able to get our new advisory group in place by June. And we were, like I said, we have 85 applications. That application closes, the period closes on May 15th. We are going to be doing that very, very quickly, but obviously not in time for the next meeting. So if you all, the seniors, I know we've asked you to do a lot and a lot of sacrifice, but if you could join us for our next meeting, just because your feedback is so very important, we would really, really appreciate that. And once again, make sure you drop your address, your current address, in the Google form so that we can make sure that we get a token of our appreciation to you at your current address. And I'll let Commissioner Brown close us out this morning.
Thank you, Tony. You did a good job of summing everything up. I also want to thank Paige and Peyton for being here today. You describe what is a true textbook example of leadership, seeing a need and forging ahead to do something different. And so I really enjoyed that. All the council members, thank you. And as Tony mentioned and implied, you can always email us if you think of things, even after you send your exit slip in, if there are things going on in the state and in your school that are that you believe we need the feedback on from a state level, feel free to email either Tony or myself. You're the Commissioner's Student Advisory Council, not just when we have a meeting, but all the time. So look forward to hearing from you, and also to the seniors. You all have a great, bright future ahead of you, and I hope you can join us on the May 21st call. Really want to also hear about how those alternative graduation ceremonies, how you experience those. And I know there won't be anything near what you wanted them to be, but that feedback will also be helpful to us. So everyone have a good rest of the day, rest of the week. And Tony has the closing comment.
One more thing. Please, 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 if you have some spare time, we would love to have more columns offered. I know some of you are finishing up too. If you want to write for us for Kentucky Teacher in the Department of Ed, there's also an opportunity to let me know. And I just want to second the commissioner about how very proud I too am a parent of a senior. Just so incredibly proud of each of the seniors and of all of our students. And just want to say congratulations to our class of 2020 once again, and hope to see you on the 21st. Thank you all.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.